Can you please tell us what's your story?
Um, okay, so I can start like where my work is currently.
Yeah, yeah.
So I've been modeling for 11 years.
Okay,
All sorts of things from runway, swimsuit, music videos, some fashion, some beauty.
okay.
I kind of got pushed into the swimwear and lingerie niche, which for me is really interesting because I've always been like very insecure of my body and I'm actually a very shy person.
Okay.
So
I
it's
could tell that, by the way. And I did not expect a model to be shy. I'm sorry if I'm generalizing the industry altogether, but I usually think when you're in front of the camera and with people, you're mostly probably not shy.
well, and see, that's the thing that was, kind of harder for me to get used to until I decided to kind of separate myself. So there's the Renee that everyone else knows in my everyday life where I am shy, I'm a tomboy, I hang out with the boys, I do the boy things. And then when I'm working, it's my other persona where it's like I'm confident, I don't have these body issues that I have. Um, it's like, almost kind of like a mask in a sense, and it feels like it because you go through hair, you go through makeup,
Yeah.
styling. So once I get on set and in front of the camera, it's a whole different person that
Right.
like you wouldn't really get to see who I am in my everyday life. And I think that's something that has benefit me in the sense of kind of feeling more secure with myself that not everyone's criticizing who I am as a person that they know personally, but
Okay.
it's also worked against me because people have their preconceived notions of me.
Okay.
Thinking, oh, she's an egotistical person. She's a narcissist because she models. I one of the comments I get a lot is that, oh, you're uneducated. So
Mhm.
whenever I comment on something
Yeah.
in social media that has to deal with the current climate in Canada or science, my education is in biochemistry. So I do have an
Right.
education in biochemistry, but people just see my tag on Instagram as a model and they see my photos and they're like, well, you're uneducated. So,
Okay.
it's kind of been a double edged sword for me. It's protected me as a person, but it's also worked against me with people coming with their own beliefs of who I am.
Nice.
So that's also kind of why I am happy that I'm doing this because
Yeah.
people can kind of see. I obviously I don't want to speak for all models, but a lot of models that I've met, we have two sides to us, and a lot of people don't know that other side of us. And it's nice to show that there's more than just someone posing in front of a camera.
Thank you. Yeah, so that's interesting actually because just like anyone else, probably I would also think that this line of work, if you're actually interested in, you might not need education as much.
Hmm.
So I'm not gonna say that the people who are bashing you are doing the right thing, but then again, this notion or this perception
Hmm.
has been built over time, and a lot of people actually prove to just seem to be proving these people right,
Yeah.
and I don't blame them completely, but I obviously am against someone who's bashing online because you do have your personal life. They don't know what you've been through or what you're going through and
Hmm.
why you're doing what you're doing. And like you said, you have an education, which I was also surprised in
Yeah.
biochemistry, right? And I could never guess that. Had you not told me over the phone, I would be like, okay, nice. So maybe let's take a step back.
Okay.
Why don't you start and tell me how did you decide to get into this line of work, and was this always what you planned when you were young?
So when I was younger, from the age of 3, I was a competitive dancer. So
Okay.
I was always in the spotlight, getting all glammed up, wearing costumes. Um, from the ages of 3 to 16, then I was taken into foster care, so I had to give up dance. Um, but never did I ever think I would end up modeling because my whole life I got bullied, like severely bullied. I switched high schools. I received like people were throwing things at me in hallways, making throwing up sounds, telling me I look like a boy, like just severely, severely bullied. So the last thing I expected was to get into modeling.
Right.
And one day I had a rugby game in high school in grade 12.
And you
Um,
were playing rugby.
I was playing rugby.
Okay.
Um, I loved rugby. It was really
Okay.
fun,
I don't
Again,
even know the rules. I don't even
that's
know the game.
that's that boy side of me. Like
Okay.
the getting dirty, the hitting people,
Okay.
getting a healthy outlet for that aggression that I had as someone who did get bullied. And just that confidence of being a like I know it's high school, but being a top athlete. Like I was always in plays, I was never benched. So it gave me that confidence that I never had as someone who was always so bullied. And I
And sorry to interrupt you. Just for our viewers, this was here in Canada, right?
yes,
Okay.
yeah.
You were born and brought up in Canada.
Yes, in Scarborough.
Okay.
So yeah.
Please continue. Sorry.
So during one of my games around the end of the year, this modeling scout came up to me and she was like, if you can look this good after a 60-minute rugby game covered in mud and sweat, you should model. So I got her contact information. I went to go see her. And then
How old were you?
I was freshly 18, like just
Okay.
turned 18.
Okay.
So I went to go see her and I signed a contract. But then afterwards, it was this whole you need to lose weight, you're too big because I was muscular. Because in rugby, you're fit, you're muscular.
True.
In
It's a sport.
modeling,
Yeah, you probably have your muscles probably built up when
yeah,
when you play.
got the thick thighs from rugby.
Okay.
Rugby players always have, they always say
Yeah.
tree trunks of legs.
Okay.
So it ended up getting really toxic really quick. And for me at that time, I wasn't in a good place emotionally. I was still
Okay.
dealing with trauma from my childhood.
Okay.
I was in a relationship that really made me not feel my best self.
Okay.
So then having someone tell me you need to lose weight, you need to do this, you need to do that. Here's a diet plan for you. I really took it to heart and I was eating like 10 almonds a day at one point. Like
that's it.
that was it. And I just kept getting told, "Oh, you're too fat, even though I'm doing all these ridiculous things."
And you were being told by the agency?
Yes, by the agency who signed me. So it's kind of funny. It's like you were interested in me to sign me because of my face, I guess, but my body didn't match it. So
Okay.
she was telling me, if you want to get any work, you need to lose weight. So at that point, I decided to go on my own and I freelanced. And I have been freelancing the whole time for the entire 11 years. I do have an agency now, but I still freelance as well because I don't want anyone to have that control over me like they did back then.
Okay.
Because back then they were trying to control my body, and then I had a relationship where they were trying to control me, and just wasn't in a healthy place.
Maybe, yeah.
But it ended up making me who I am today, where I am in a healthy space, and I do realize a lot of things that are wrong in that industry. And I learned about myself. So it was a bad situation, but I wouldn't change it because it made my career as a model for sure.
Okay.
Wanting to prove people wrong.
Okay.
And it just helped me grow as a person.
So there are a lot of things that I would like to discuss on what you just mentioned, but probably one of the few things that I would like to touch upon for our viewers who aspire to become models or look up to people who they think they can be. The glamour side of this is very appealing, I'm assuming, especially
But
for
there's
people.
not much of it. That's the smoke and mirrors of it. There's not a
Okay.
lot of glamour to it.
Okay. Well, that's what you know, and that's probably what you can share with us. But from what I see, because I've never had anyone, even friends, in this industry, because we just see what's on the TV, what's on
Exactly.
magazines, and nowadays on social media. And before podcast, to be honest, I've never even sat in front of a camera and record anything on my own.
Yeah.
So it's interesting for me, let alone for the viewers. But just going back at the age of 18, where people are very naive,
Mhm.
and I'm not again trying to attack the gender aspect over here, but as a woman, I tend to believe you're more, how should I put this? You're naive to an extent that you tend to believe a lot of things which they try to sell you in a good way. It can be bad for you, or the objective can be wrong
Mhm.
of that person to get something out of you. So at that age when you were approached, did you have any mentor back then, or did you go to your family to discuss this, or was this your personal decision?
So it was kind of my personal decision. I did have my now family, which is technically my adopted family,
Okay.
who are basically the only family that I have, that
Okay.
I've had since I was 16. But I totally hear what you're saying, and I have come across it. Admittedly, I've come across it a lot. And that's why I kind of wanted to step in as a mentor for a lot of people. When I was in school, I went to Seneca College, and I was actually part of a girls group where I did talk to women about all sorts of things. But I tried to focus more on women who had a similar upbringing to me because the upbringing that I had that was filled with, a biological father who was abusive, on drugs all the time and stuff. I wasn't your typical 18-year-old. I wasn't that naive girl. Like, I knew what was right, what was wrong. I had a head on my shoulders, so a lot of people were always surprised about how old I was because I always acted much older. Ever since I was like 12, basically, I've had people say, you're really mature. And it's like that. I guess that's kind of a positive that came from my upbringing is it made me an adult really early. So I always had a pretty good head on my shoulders. Where I was lacking at that time was, my relationship, because as someone who didn't really have a family growing up, um, for me, I tended to really latch on to partners and trust them at that point because I've never had that love and that investment and that attachment to someone. Um, I was raised by my grandparents and my dad was in and out of the picture all the time, but no one ever said I love you in my household. No one ever hugged. Like it was never anything like that. So when I had boyfriends, I got super attached to that love that I never had before. So that's when I started putting too much trust in the wrong people sometimes. And really taking it to heart. And my boyfriend at the time, when I started modeling when I was 18, that's what kind of created the toxic environment for me was because that seemed to be someone I could trust. And I internalized every single thing. So what you're saying, yes, but for me, I didn't really have that. When it came to modeling, I was always very I knew I wasn't gonna be taken advantage of.
Okay.
Sometimes people really try to get models to work for free, but I always had this mindset like I'm not working for free. I'm doing this as a job or as a career, and you want something from me, so you should be paying me accordingly. Whereas a lot of young models work for free for so many years of their life because they just want to say that they're models and they want these cool photos. But at the end of the day, you're creating a culture for yourself where you can get exploited.
Correct.
And that's something that I always had my foot down on. Even with my agent, like when she sent me my contract, I said, no, I'm going to still be able to freelance. We're not doing exclusive because I'm going to control my body, my career. So if I wasn't in that bad relationship at the time, I wouldn't have internalized the whole losing weight thing like I did. But it was more so from my relationship, not from my
From
professional career.
really,
Yes.
and I'm assuming a lot of women, fortunate or unfortunate, I've actually had people in my life who I've known in the past
Hmm.
who've gone through a similar experience, probably abuse in their childhood.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about this in detail, but I could actually see how that experience or trauma shaped them or helped them in being what they are. And much of it is actually relatable when you know about them, then you can say, oh, that's why this person, he or she, acts in a certain way
Hmm.
or makes decision in a certain way. And one of them is validation.
Yeah.
I think you were seeking validation for yourself, and you were finding that in a partner,
Hmm.
because as you said, when you were growing up, you probably could not get that from your family or from anyone who's close to you as a relative,
Yeah.
and hence you were looking that outside, and that turned out to be not as pleasant as you
Yeah.
said, right? So for women who probably have a similar experience than like you, and they're probably young, what would you like to tell them? Like what message would you like to give to those women who probably are not as smart as you, or probably didn't would not be able to realize it as soon as you did at an
Hmm.
early age, and then probably go through a lot of more traumas? So how do you think these women should be handling such a situation or people like that in their life?
I mean, it's something that I'm still constantly always reminding myself of.
Okay.
And it's just to always, I mean, people say a lot, but it is to be true to yourself. Never, sacrificing your boundaries or your morals or your expectations, because once you start um slacking on those a little bit, people tend to really exploit that and take advantage of it. And then you kind of get comfortable with it as well. Um
With the abuse and or with the
just with with any type of exploitation, whether it be a boyfriend telling you you're not good enough, you're fat, you're this, you need to change that,
Wow.
or also repeating patterns of abuse. As someone who grew up in an abusive household, it kind of primes you to take lesser forms of abuse as okay, if
Mhm.
that makes sense.
No, that does, yes, and I can probably already imagine what that means to you, and
Yeah.
probably how it looked like back in the day when you were young. So, how did you get out of that relationship, or what made you think that I'm no longer going to take this, and I want to do something, better for myself, or I want to work on myself for that matter? And
Honestly, it wasn't me. Um, he booked a trip to Brazil with his family.
Mhm.
I was originally supposed to go with him,
Okay,
but his mother didn't like me at all because well, turns out I am Portuguese, I found out. But at the
okay,
time, I wasn't, as far as we all knew, I wasn't Portuguese, I wasn't Brazilian.
okay,
And for her, that was not okay. She
okay,
wanted her son to be with a woman who was Portuguese or at least Brazilian.
okay.
So she was also a huge critic of mine, telling me I should shave off my eyebrows and get them tattooed on thinner because they're really unprofessional being bigger.
Sorry, and this was how long ago? Same
The
time when you
Yeah,
were.
this was throughout college. I was with this boyfriend through most of a big chunk of my college
Okay.
experience. Um, and I put up with things like him asking for an open relationship, him having a very close female friend that he traveled way too far to go see all the time.
Really?
Just all these things that registered as weird to me, but I put them aside and I dealt with them because I felt like, well, no one's gonna love me like he loves me. And then one day he went to Brazil, and communication kind of went quiet.
Okay.
And then, it's just supposed to be him, his mom, and his sister. And they already don't like me. They hate me. They want him to be with someone else. So it was already making me feel a little weird that they were going for so long and
Mhm.
he's with these people. Um, and then I found out that instead of staying at the hotel, he was staying at hostels, and hostels are often co-ed. And then when he came home, something just didn't feel right. It felt weird. He felt distant. And then I found out that I still don't know what exactly happened, but something happened in that hostel that he was at after, days and days and days of him telling me, nothing happened. Why don't you trust me? Like, you're
Mhm.
so insecure, you're so
Mhm.
controlling.
So
But
this
then
was
it
like
comes
more
out.
blaming onto you,
Yes.
playing the victim and trying to.
Yes.
Okay.
Making me seem like I'm crazy and I have
Mhm.
issues. And then a little while after it came out that he did fess up. So he actually ended up ending the relationship when he told me that.
Okay.
So after that is when I started realizing, like, I put so much into this person.
Mhm.
And once you leave a relationship like that, you start to reflect on it and you start to realize like how you really internalized everything. And all of my boundaries that normally I wouldn't be okay with or that would feel weird to me, I kind of overlooked them or pushed them aside. And that's why I always say, like, one piece of advice would be never sacrifice your boundaries or what you deem as acceptable. Because once you do it, it turns into a slippery slope where you start accepting everything
True.
that's beneath you. And then it can open a pattern of abuse or a pattern of maybe not abuse, but like what I was saying, gaslighting,
Mhm.
making you the bad person and they're the victim when actually they
They're the
they
one.
are.
Yeah.
So, that's something that I always emphasize to myself currently and to other people is always respect your own boundaries. It's like I saw Camila Cabello was on TikTok the other day talking about how often it looks like self-discipline, with self-respect and self-worth often looks like self-discipline of respecting your boundaries and making sure you do things even when you don't necessarily want to because maybe you really you love this guy and you want to be with him or you don't feel like going to the gym even though you're trying to be healthier. All these things ends up actually being self-discipline.
Mhm.
And I heard that and I was like, that is an amazing way to look at it. So that's how I look at it. I'm like, self-discipline is the most important thing that you can have in all aspects of your life, but especially your social and your family,
Mhm.
because they're the ones who tend to overstep it.
True. True. One more point which I thought I'd probably cover in the later part of our podcast, but since you've mentioned it quite a few times now, would you be comfortable in sharing how your childhood was and what kind of abuse you being, because I take you, again, let me first give our viewer my notion as to why I'm going to ask this question, just so that um they have it clear that I'm not trying to exploit your life. I'm just generally interested in understanding and knowing, as an outsider, when we look at the Western country,
Mhm.
we generally have a notion that people, probably at least of that country, like you yourself, you're white, you're from this country, you're born and brought up in this country. Racism is something probably people like you don't face,
Mhm.
because and as we grow up, the type of racism we hear about mostly are either towards the black community,
Yeah.
or towards probably the immigrants,
Mhm.
or someone, again, if we're looking at gender, yes, we've seen a lot of abuse done to women over the course of history.
Yeah.
We've seen that. But again, living in this age and time, you do not expect someone to be harsh towards children, or for that matter, a person of your color, and being born and brought up in this country. So, can you share something, if you're comfortable, about your childhood?
Yeah, totally. I'm always very open about my childhood
Mhm.
because it's a big part of what made me who I am today. And as I said, when I was going to Seneca, I
Please
had
feel free to have your coffee at
yeah,
the same time.
okay. Yeah, when I went to Seneca, I had a group for women who experienced what I did because I was alone through it all. And it was a really hard process that, again, it did mature me really quickly, but I missed out on having a childhood because I was dealing with all these things myself. So, yes, I love talking about it. So, um, I grew up in Scarborough,
Mhm.
like in an area called Danzig. So a lot of
Okay.
people who are from Scarborough know it's not a good area.
Okay.
Very sketchy area, lots of crime, very low
Even
income.
nowadays, I mean, if you hear about Scarborough, most of the crimes that you see are unfortunately coming from that place.
Mhm.
I've been in this country for only 4 years. I've had no chance to live in that place yet. However, I've moved around downtown Toronto a lot,
Mhm.
and I've been to places in Mississauga, Brampton, Tobico. But Scarborough is something, when something goes wrong, and especially when you have Six Buzz and these
Yes.
other social media that post stuff, it's either coming from Scarborough or
Or
Brampton,
Brampton, yes.
right?
Yes, those
S-
are the big 2.
Yeah. So in your time, Scarborough was probably, when you were growing up, something that was in that zone already, like in
It
terms of
was already
crime.
in that zone, but it was more pocketed. So I lived in a
Sorry,
pocket.
what's that word?
Pocketed?
Yeah.
Like, it was more in, like, pockets.
Oh,
Like, it
okay.
wasn't all of Scarborough, it was more in pockets, whereas those pockets have kind of expanded a little bit more.
Okay. So there were like small areas probably where
Yes.
these would take place, and you were living in one of those?
Yes.
Okay, okay,
So yeah, so I grew up in one of those areas, with my grandparents. My grandparents
okay,
raised me because my mom was 16, my dad was 18. So they
okay.
were really young. Um, and my grandmother fought for custody for me because my mother had she just wasn't she was young, she abandoned me when I was 3 days old.
Mhm.
And it just seemed like she wouldn't be a good parent, like
And this was your paternal grandmother, or?
yes, yes,
Okay,
my paternal, so it was my dad's mother.
okay,
Um, and, life was good and it was both. It was good, it was bad. My grandmother herself, is definitely a victim of abuse and internalize those things as the older generation tend to internalize those more and start creating that almost as a standard for women. Like, "Oh, you just deal with this. Like, that's just how it is. That's just how men are. So you have to be okay with it." So I was already kind of in that environment. My grandfather was an alcoholic who would just drink all the time, throw bottles at my grandmother, get upset with me, yell at me.
you would witness all this?
Oh, all the time.
Okay.
Like, all I witnessed in my life was abuse or I experienced abuse. But throughout it all, my grandmother put me into dance when I was 3 years old to try to keep me away from my father because of how abusive he was. Because he would just get high all the time, like meth, crack, anything you could think of. He would just always be like he would have, a cut off Coke can smoking crack in the living room. And my grandmother wanted to get me away from that. But at the same time, she's the person who enabled him.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing you'll notice as I talk is me and my grandmother have a really interesting relationship, how I feel towards her, because she was my everything. She was my mother. She was my safe place, but she was also who put me in harm's way and who also turned her back on me at one of the moments in my life that I needed it most. But yeah, so grew up, my dad worked for a carnival most of the time.
Okay.
So when he was away, it was good because it was me and my grandma, and my grandpa was still an alcoholic, but a lot of times he was actually in the hospital because he kept having strokes. So I'd live in the hospital basically because we would just go see him all the time. So my days would be go to school, go to the hospital for a few hours, then go to dance. And then by the time I come home, it's 11 o'clock at night.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, growing up, school was not really a thing I took seriously. My grandmother always told me, you're just going to marry a rich man and you're never going to work a day in your life. But for me, I always wanted to work. I always wanted to be independent because we had no money. And I was like, why would I want this for myself? Like, I want more than that. But I was never, ever allowed to work when I was living with her. And again, it was also just me wanting to somehow get away from home because she would keep letting my dad back in, even though, I'd watch my dad drag her down the stairs by her hair, throw her into walls.
Your grandmother.
Yeah, his mother.
Oh.
He was so abusive to her and me, but every time he would get arrested, she would bail him out and bring him back home. So it was a very double edged where this woman is my security.
At the same time, it's just probably not the safest place for you, right?
No, and it wasn't. And one thing I'll say is I never had friends in school ever. Everyone bullied me, picked on me.
Why do you think that happened though?
So what happened to me was I went to a private school. I went to a Montessori school for kindergarten to grade 4.
Mm-hmm.
So my grandmother, she would just work in the childcare at the Montessori so that I could go to the Montessori because otherwise we couldn't afford it. But then she wouldn't be working there anymore starting when I was going to grade 5. So I had to go to a public school. So I was entering into a public school in grade 5 in Guildwood, which is a very rich white community, where everyone's parents were already friends. So all the kids have been friends since they were in diapers, and very rich. And again, I was from the wrong side of the tracks because there was literally a train track that divided Guildwood from Scarborough.
Okay.
So I was the trash from the other side of the tracks.
Okay.
So that already didn't help me. I was coming to a school where everyone was already clicked up since they were kids. I came from the wrong side of the tracks. And at that time, it wasn't cool to be a tomboy. So I came to school with my skateboard, my hair tucked up in a ponytail with a hat, wearing like a full Puma fit. I came with my Game Boy DS, and all that did was put a target on my back.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you were targeted mainly because of your lifestyle or how you looked, or maybe how just you presented yourself?
It was everything. It was being a tomboy. It was people said I always looked like a boy because I have the fuller eyebrows.
Okay.
And the girls were starting to wear makeup back then in grade 5, whereas I didn't really. I mean, I do the heavy black eyeliner like Avril Lavigne, who was like my idol.
Okay.
But again, she was that tomboy too, but it wasn't fully cool at that point. So
because usually, like I can tell you from my perspective that when you see women who's probably more tomboyish or have the interest that you had back then, you're usually scared of those women, no? Because as a woman, this is again a perception or something that I also can relate to when I was growing up. I did have female friends who were not really feminine back then in their interest. They would play video games, they would skateboard, and they would be a little, strong. And they did face bully. I actually am still friends with one of them on Facebook for a very long time. We don't talk as much, but she's just a friend because I grew up in Philippines.
Okay.
And she was there, and being a tomboy, she would hang out with us, the boys.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be very honest with you, because we were kids back then, I would never even treat her as a woman. If I would want something, or if I would like to communicate something, I would literally just put my hand on her shoulder and talk to her, you did this, you did that, and she would do the same. So there was not usually with women you would be like, hey, you'd not probably be as
Yeah.
boyish with them. So with her, I don't know, it was probably how she carried herself. She had very short hair, but the rest of the women were afraid of her because she would be very she would be into sports, she'd be aggressive.
Yeah.
So my notion is completely different, that why would people bully you if they actually perceive you as someone who has more manly characteristics, if I have to put it. And shouldn't they be afraid of you, or?
Well, no, because also I was very timid and I was shy because of everything
Okay.
going on at home.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I was already like, I'd always be down like this, like keeping everything, being in on
Okay.
myself. And I was always bullied for how tall I was, so I'd always be like slouched around, like trying to appear shorter. Um,
I mean, I wouldn't bully you, but you definitely are tall. Okay, you're taller than me,
yeah,
and you said your height is
I'm 5'10".
5'10", right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
my friends were boys. I loved
Okay.
the boys because we all liked the same things. I never related to girls that much.
Okay.
Even when I was in dance, I spent most like 5, 6 days a week at dance, but none of them were ever my friends because I couldn't relate to the cattiness,
Okay.
the drama, the talking about each other and
Hmm.
criticizing each other's looks. Like that was just never me. So I never so at dance didn't have any friends really, never got along with the girls.
Okay.
At school, the boys were different there. Um, they were just so girl orientated. So if the girls didn't like me, the boys didn't like me.
Oh, okay.
So the girls bullied me and the boys followed along. But the boys wouldn't even know what it was about half the time. They would just be doing whatever the girls are doing. And then in my personal life, I lived again like in a low income, predominantly black area.
Okay.
And that didn't work out for me either because, being a white person in a predominantly black area, I wasn't very liked. And,
Okay.
I received threats. I had this one girl who said that if she ever saw me, she was going to cut me because a boy she liked was talking to me.
Okay.
And she was like, sh- what words can we say here?
You can say anything.
Okay. She,
Anything.
she was
Anything.
like, you white bitches coming in
Hmm.
and like the guys always like you. And I'm like, well, I don't want your guy. I don't like him. I'm just living
Yeah.
here. And then it started becoming this thing where, being one of the only white people in a predominantly black area, people just didn't like me because of everything that was going on, thinking, oh, you're the person who put us here. Essentially, seeing a white person and being like, what you embody.
Hmm.
And it's like, well, I'm here with you.
Correct. Yeah.
We're all going to the same food banks. We're all under the same system. We're all collecting the same welfare. We're all in this together,
Hmm.
Like if I put you here, I wouldn't be here with you.
Hmm.
Which is funny because that's actually something Theo Vaughn, I don't know if you know Theo Vaughn.
No.
So he's a comedian and podcaster.
Okay.
But he grew up in the South and he had the same experience where he was experiencing racism for being white. And
Is he also Canadian? Sorry.
no, he's American.
Okay.
But he also said, he's like, if I put you guys here in the ghetto, do you think I'd hang out here with you guys and live here with you? And I was like, that's perfectly how I would describe it.
Okay.
Because it's totally justified for them to feel that way, but it's misplaced
Yeah.
because we're all here together. We're
Together.
all
Yeah. You're
facing the
not
same
coming from
struggles.
outside, right?
No.
If you were, and you were probably getting off on your luxury car,
Yeah.
and having your expensive handbag, sure, they,
Yeah.
they can probably have that grudge towards you, but again, still not justified. But again, I could understand probably where that is going to come from or coming from. But you were living in the same community,
Exactly.
same environment, going to the same school as they were.
Yep. It's
And
preconceived notions, basically, is what it is.
wow, so that is really hard if you are to think like that. So how did you handle that?
So as you can see, I didn't really have any friends except for I had this one friend and he's still my best friend.
Okay.
I don't see him as much as I'd like to because he lives downtown and he's a social butterfly.
Okay.
And I'm busy too. And unfortunately, I mean, last we spoke, he's moving to Mexico in October, so we'll see. But my best friend Matthew, he was my rock. He was my everything back then. Because I couldn't really have many friends because my grandmother didn't want people to know what was going on in my life,
Mhm.
the abuse, the sexual abuse, all those things, because she said, well, Children's Aid will take you away from me and people will bully you. And I hate that she was right about the second part. Like, she was right, but it was hard for me because I was going through all these things that I knew weren't right, but it was just, as a kid, you can't get away from it because I didn't want to be away from her either. Because, like I said, she was my everything.
Mhm.
So Matthew was one of my friends who I confided in, and he was always there for me, and he became more like a brother. He would come to my house. If my grandmother was being, a little nasty to me, he would defend me. He was always there for me. And, my grandmother didn't like that. So she's like,
Oh,
get that faggot out of my house because
okay.
she's older. So she doesn't like gay people.
Okay.
But he always fought to still be with me. And he was my lifeline because it was someone in my life who knew what was going on with me
Mhm.
and someone who fought for me when no one else did.
Okay.
So that's kind of how I got through it.
And again, it's up to you if you wanna probably discuss that part of the life, which I'm sorry, this part of the life that I'm gonna highlight. You mentioned something about sexual abuse. Was that also again, if you're comfortable sharing that?
Yeah, totally.
Okay, thank you. Um, was that also during the same timeline you were living in Scarborough? And
Yeah, so that was kind of the turning point of everything for me as a person, for my life.
Mhm,
Um, so many things. Like, I encountered a lot of abuse from my dad over the years, physical abuse.
mhm,
I mean, verbal, obviously, but the verbal is nothing compared to the physical. So you don't even think of it as abuse anymore when it's verbal because
mhm,
you're used to getting hit, or you're used to also extreme levels of control. Like, I had no privacy in my life. Everything was recorded on my computer, my phone. I had zero privacy. I wasn't allowed to hang out with boys because if I wanted to hang out with boys, I was a slut. If I wanted to shave my legs, I was going to be a whore because I was going to be having sex.
and these
And
comments were passed on by your father?
yes,
Okay.
ironically.
Mhm,
But that's generally how it goes. And that's why when I see some really over controlling men to their daughters, it raises a red flag to me because it's almost like they want to control you for themselves. It's like they have this weird thing where they want to preserve you for themselves. And that's what happened to me. That's what the culmination of everything was there was one night around Christmas he came home from the carnival. And the only thing that we ever bonded on was video games. So we always play video games together from N64 and PS1 all the way up. We'd
mhm,
always have every new he'd always go out stealing consoles while he was on the road, stealing games on the road. Like,
okay.
but for him, that was his love language with me, was we're gonna play these games together and whatever. Um, until there was one night where it was around Christmas and I was getting sleep because I'd always fall asleep on the couch.
Mhm.
And that's when the rape took place.
And this was from your own father?
My own father, yeah. The one who was controlling me, saying I couldn't hang out with boys because I'd want to have sex and I would be a slut. And that's when I realized that, like, he's controlling me and putting these things on me because it's almost like he wants to preserve me for himself, but also because he's looking at that way. I was in like all the way up from grade 5 to grade 8 is when he was saying these things to me. And at that age, like, yes, I liked boys, but I would never be thinking about anything like that.
True. Yeah.
Um, so to essentially lose your virginity that way is a very horrible
It is.
experience.
I mean, I have no words, to be honest. I mean, I've heard about sexual abuse, which I'm gonna talk to a little bit, probably not much, how I know about these, but yeah, I literally have no words. I'm really sorry for what you've been through, and I could only imagine how that must have felt. And
Mhm.
how old were you?
I was in grade 7 at the time, so I don't know how old that would make me, but I was a young teen.
Hmm.
And that was a pivotal point for me because that's when I went upstairs to my grandmother and I told her what happened,
You did? Okay.
and she said, "You can't tell anyone because if you tell someone, Children's Aid is gonna take you away from me and people are gonna bully you." So, obviously I confided in Matthew because he was my lifeline. And he always stood up for me. I remember there were times where my dad was like crazy hot. Like, if you went into my house, you'd see holes all over the walls because he would, just from him throwing my grandmother into the walls or him punching walls, or one time he tried to punch me but punched the wall. Like, my house was such a mess, but Matt would always come in and he would try to defend me. He would start yelling at my dad, which to me was crazy because I'm like, this man, like, from what I've heard, I don't know how true this is, but from what I heard on the road, he's killed people in the carnival. So for me,
Someone standing up for you.
having Matthew do that for me was like pivotal. Like I said, he was my lifeline. There were points where I felt suicidal in my life, and if it wasn't for Matthew,
Sure.
I probably would have killed myself.
I'm sure. Yeah.
So it was hard. But yeah, so I went up and I told Matt, and he got more protective of me, and he started hating my grandmother more because in his eyes and anyone else's eyes is, how can you cover for this man? Like, I know
Right.
he's your son, and fine, you put up with the abuse. But people already didn't understand how she would be okay with the physical abuse towards me. But then with that was kind of the line, which it was a line for me too. I felt so betrayed.
Mhm.
I was like, now I know my safety isn't you, which I always felt that way. So time went along. It was something I was just dealing with by myself. And he went off back to the carnival and he wasn't around for a while. So things were like kind of okay. And then there was this other person who was in our friend group at one point. And I thought he was also one of my friends because we'd all hang out together, play video games. And I remember go over to his house, play Resident Evil, like that
Okay.
kind of thing.
Okay.
But remember how I said the boys do what the girls do
Mhm.
when it comes to
Mhm.
bullying?
Yeah.
So he liked this girl who was one of my top bullies,
Mhm.
and he told her what happened to me. So then the next day I went to school and everyone's calling me a father fucker.
So wait, how did it reach to her again?
My friend at the time, Cody, decided he was going to tell her, hey, I have this dirt on Renee.
Oh.
So the next day, that's how fast it travels. The next day I went to school and everyone was calling me a father fucker.
Damn.
And people were throwing things at me. And the bullying got so bad that I just stopped going to school. I was like skipping all the time. And at the same time, I was also afraid because now it came out and my grandmother told me to not tell anyone
Mhm.
or I'll be taken away. Well, that's what happened. The police came. I made my testimony.
And the police came because of how the news spread? Or?
Yeah, because it went to the principal.
Oh.
Because the principal knew I was getting bullied. So he was always keeping tabs. And then when he heard that, he's like, okay, we need to intervene at this point. So the police came. They removed him and I was put into CPS. So I was in Child Protective Services right away. So that was really hard for me because I was like, well, my grandma's right. I got bullied
Mhm.
and I got taken away. And I got put in with a foster family who I also had the same issue where her kids, it was a Black family, and her kids didn't like having me around. So that was hard because I'm already away from my safe place. I'm in a foster home and
You pretty much have zero control.
I have zero control of where I am. I didn't want to be
Like, not
placed
that
here.
you had control before, but
It was
right
even
now,
worse
yeah,
because it was familiar. Whereas this
Correct.
is a whole new place with whole new people who don't like me based off the color of my skin. So that was something that was also really hard, is like, well, now I'm dealing with this while being away from home, while dealing with getting bullied at school. So it was just really, really hard. But then after a month, my grandmother had to get letters from everyone. So she went to my dance studio, got letters from people saying that she was a fit guardian.
Okay.
And my dad was no longer allowed around me until I turned 18. So he's no longer allowed around me. So they decided, okay, we'll let her go back home with her grandmother. So I came back home and things were good because it was just me and her. By that time, my grandfather died. My dad was away. And then we were in the process of going to court over what happened to me. So things were fine. I went back to dance. I went to a new school. I was previously going to Laurier in Guildwood. I switched to Mowat in Scarborough.
Okay.
And things were really different there. I made some friends there. No one knew my history. No one knew my past.
Okay.
But also very different environment. It wasn't rich white kids. You had people from everywhere, like all races, all income levels. You had jocks, you had artsy people. You just had everything. And in Mowat is where I felt like, oh wait, school can actually be like a good experience. And I ended up taking school seriously. I got into the sciences. I made some friends. But then the court case was also going on at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is where the other impactful part came in for me is when I went to court, I had to obviously say what happened to me. And that's when I learned that I hate lawyers because they were trying to discredit me. You know, they were like, well, that time of year, what backpack did you have going to school? And it's like, does it
And you were
matter?
a child, yeah, they're just trying to probably push you to an extent where they could prove you wrong,
Yes,
right?
it's
Despite
what
you
they were
having
doing.
to go through what you did, now
Yeah.
you're going through another set of trauma, which is probably new and in front of the judges, in front of probably people. I'm not sure how the courtroom was.
Again, as someone who's very shy and reserved, so
Exactly.
imagine that added level.
Yeah, I know. So I could only imagine what you've been through in that time. So what was the outcome of
So my grandmother testified against me.
against you?
Yeah.
That you lied about?
She just said, I don't know what happened.
Really?
Yeah. And
Whereas
then
you felt that she's your confidant,
Mhm.
and you went up to her, told her everything, probably as soon as it happened, or
Yeah, and then when I told her that night, she was like, okay, because she kept saying like, you know, I'm gonna get rid of him. I'm gonna get rid of him. I'm not gonna bail him out. She always did. Well, then that night I told her, and she's like, okay, I'm gonna get rid of him now. He's not gonna be here anymore. So I felt like, okay, this was it for her. This is what made her like what made it stick. But she didn't want people to publicly know what happened to me because she still to this day holds by that it's bad for me if other people find out.
Mhm.
And also I'm sure she's got a lot of shame about it too.
Mhm.
Because even like right now she's in a home. But even when I go see her, she's like, "Have you seen your father?" And I'm like, "Why would I
Wow.
want to see this
man? Yeah.
why? Like why?" But it's like she's got this denial in her head
Mhm.
of what happened, and it's so heartbreaking because in that moment, like she obviously believed me. She expected, like she didn't seem surprised because with the patterns of abuse,
Mhm.
doesn't seem like that much of a stretch in the way he was towards me. All these weird rules and restrictions, and
Mhm.
almost like an obsession. And yeah, so it was just so weird that it went from her supporting me to her testifying against me.
Oh.
But then so then it ended up getting passed off and delayed to another date where my dad decided to opt in for a jury. I don't know why you would do that.
Okay.
But he ended up pleading guilty in the end. And this is one of the huge issues I have with Canada is he got 6 months probation.
No way.
So for rape, you get 6-month probation.
And not jail time.
No.
Wow.
So that's one of my big things in Canada where that was one of my first moments where I felt less pride in my country. When I was younger, I used to love being Canadian. I was like, Canada's awesome. It's great. You know, I had that idea that everyone has. I mean, the idea that a lot of immigrants have when they come here is Canada
I'm very
is
proud of this
amazing.
country, to be honest. It has given me a lot, which we'll speak to it in a bit, but I'm actually from an outsider. This country has given me a lot.
Yeah.
I'm a citizen now, and in 4 years' time, I think I've managed to get work, improve a lot of things in my life, which I probably would never have been able to back home.
Yeah.
And my country is Pakistan, although I was brought somewhere else, but we moved to Pakistan, and ever since that age, I was there. So I'm not saying that country is worse. It's just there were a lot of opportunities probably I would not have
Yeah.
been able to just avail and do something. And this country has given me a lot. So yeah, I could only imagine what you probably felt when that verdict was given.
Yeah. Yeah. It made me realize, in terms of Canadian law, it's not great. And I've heard other women, when I went off to college and I started this group for women who have experienced what I experienced, most of them have very similar stories.
Probably a lot of them don't even speak about it.
Well, a lot of them don't, and that's part of the reason why is it's very traumatizing to speak about it to authorities and then go through court and then just to get that out of it. It feels, it was just like in 13 Reasons Why. So a lot of people got upset in that show when the consequence for rape was only, again, it was a few months probation. People were mad about that and they wanted to change that in the show. And I'm like, no, that's perfect. That's exactly what it is. That is my
TV
story
series that you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a Netflix series. It was it's had some controversy over it, but
Mhm.
yeah, that was one of the things people were upset about was the low rape sentence. And I'm like, but that's realistic. That's literally my story.
Yeah, I mean, for me, okay, so I'll just share something how I could relate to this. I've had a few people in my life who've come and share this experience with me, and obviously there were most of them were women, and I was alien to this idea of how someone from your family could be the one who
Yeah.
would do such a heinous act to you. And all of these women that who shared it with me, some of them are my friends still, some of them are no longer my friends, and they confided in me, they shared this story with me, and I really don't know how to react. Like,
Hmm.
and when it comes to this, I'll tell you why. Because even when we were growing up, I have two siblings.
Yeah.
I have an older brother and I have a younger sister. So even when growing up, um, the element of how other men have towards women, it's like, it's okay to probably touch them
Hmm.
in a creepy way. It's okay to probably pass comments about their body,
Yeah.
but it was never the case for us. And I probably can speak for my brother as well because we've grown up together. It's
Yeah.
just probably very recent that we live apart. But it came mainly from my father. I
Hmm.
mean, he set a really good example of, in terms of how he treated women around him.
Yeah.
And plus, the fact that I have a sister now makes you more cautious.
Yeah.
You would not want anyone to do that with your sister. And my father is a very was sorry, he passed away. So he was very old traditional,
Yeah.
and that way he said that. But what I mean by that is that it's our responsibility as brothers to protect the sister.
Yeah.
So he would not care if someone tried to um justify or bring in some bullshit that no, your son did this, and it's not good, because he would ask why did he do it. Then
Hmm.
there was an incident actually in school where my sister came back home and she was crying and complaining to my father that this person probably pulled her hair and threw her, something like that. And we were in the same school.
Yeah.
So my father's question was only one: where was your brother? And she was like, he was in school. And he said, he asked her, did you go and tell him? She's like, yeah, I told him in the school bus on the way back.
Hmm.
So he probably asked her, did he do something? So she said no. So he came up to me and he literally slapped me hard. He's like, how dare you? I mean,
Yeah.
your job is to protect your sister. So if she actually tells you that someone did that to you,
Hmm.
so you know what I did first thing in the morning? That when I went to school, I actually smacked that person, and I was called to the principal office, and my
Yeah.
father was called, and those were the times my father would defend me.
Yeah.
My father would be like, "No, if my son did that, you better make your rules better, because my daughter was hurt. You didn't do anything to that person.
Yeah.
Now this guy is the brother, and I'm sorry to say he's gonna do whatever is required."
I know.
So
Yeah.
from that onwards, at an early age, even when I was bullied, I was not bullied as much, I would say, because I was kind of, you can say, the bully, but not in a very wrong way.
Yeah.
I was bullying more people in a different way, not the way that I see on TVs. But bully is bully. I'm not justifying it. But I later became the bully myself when there would be kids from different school. I'd be like, oh yeah, why you here? Why you moved here? Those were the type of things that I would do and probably tease them out. But initially I was bullied in a school bus, and my father would, again, when I come back home crying, instead of patting my back, he would literally smack me. He was like, why are you crying? You're a man,
Yeah.
you need to go back and stand up for yourself. If you can't do that, no one else is going to do that for you.
Yeah.
So that was the old tradition that we were the mindset that we were just injected by my father, that you're supposed to stand up as a man and not cry about anything for any reason.
Hmm.
You need to face it. So again, coming back to the point, we have a sister who's growing up with us. She's just 3 years younger to me. So we would never have this urge or even the confidence to molest, touch a woman in an inappropriate way, or for that matter, pass any comments that we know is sexual.
Yeah.
Till date, I'm 33 years old. I've never done it, and
Right.
I'm gonna upload this. This thing is gonna come. If there's any woman who can just comment that I've even done that once. I don't think that's gonna
Yeah.
happen. No one is gonna come up to me and say, "Yeah, you touched me inappropriately," because I've never done that. And there's one more example that I want to quickly give. And when I moved to Pakistan from Philippines, then I moved not only to Pakistan, I also actually moved to a very backward city, or you
Oh,
can call it
okay.
a village. So from a metropolitan city,
Yeah.
from Pasig City, Manila, I went to a place called Mirpurkhas. So
Okay.
it's a village over there, or a city, but for me it was more like a village. And Karachi is the metropolitan city of my country. So when I went there, so people, their mindset is so backward that even if you see a woman who's covered in hijab up
Mhm.
till here,
Yeah.
nothing showing, they would still pass comment and try
Yeah.
to visualize her, and they would actually ride motorcycles and smack their ass and just
Oh
leave.
my goodness.
And a lot of my friends did that.
Yeah.
And I could not just put two and two together, and
Yeah.
they would literally have fun. I don't know what pleasure they were getting out of it. I don't want to name call anyone. And even if I do, I'm not afraid of that, but it's just I don't want to talk about them. But it was probably how they were growing up. It
Yeah.
was okay for them to comment on their chest, on their back, and in a very in a way that you would think, yo, that's so disgusting. How can you even seek or find pleasure in that? And they
Mhm.
would touch women who were probably out there shopping, literally in a street which is filled with women. You barely have space to walk.
Yeah.
They would ride their motorcycles, and they would touch them, and they would smack them, and they would just leave. And
Yeah.
they would laugh about it, they would talk about it, then they would probably even fantasize about it.
Yeah.
So that's how crazy it is out there.
Oh, and it's coming here too though, because I've had some experiences that were like that, and every time it's ended the same way. Whereas, well, in my country, you wouldn't be allowed to wear that. Well, in my country, you would have been assaulted for that. In my country, you would have been killed for that. So it's interesting because that kind of mindset is starting to come here now. And I think that's something that comes with, bringing in a lot of people from one population,
Mm-hmm.
from especially like from bigger cities.
Mm-hmm.
Like you also get that a lot, I think, from India, is that they have their own culture, but there's
Mm-hmm.
so many people and there's so many coming in
Yeah.
that they bring their culture here.
Yeah.
And then people like me are starting to experience it. Like
Mm-hmm.
I remember back when I was in college, I was wearing jean shorts, but not like crazy short Daisy Dukes, like just jean
Mm-hmm.
shorts and a crop top. And I was on the bus and like right at the front, right near the bus driver.
Mm-hmm.
And I had my headphones in because I always have my headphones in. So it's like a sign, like, don't talk to me. I don't want to talk.
Exactly. That's exactly what the sign is. When I
Yeah.
have my headphones on, until unless it's an emergency, or you want to really you have something to communicate, or it's just a sign, don't talk to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting in the bus and then there's these two guys and I can see them. Like, when you could just feel someone looking at you?
Yeah.
They just kept looking like this, like not even slyly, like not even like a little whatever.
Literally
They would
staring
literally
at you,
just,
right?
and I was like, what the?
They're probably looking at your legs.
Yeah.
I'll be
Well,
honest, yeah,
and
they're looking at your legs.
so what happened was they were trying to tap me to talk, but I was like, well, they're trying to talk to me. And I don't actually have music in, but I do it so that it's a sign and I'll talk to me. But this way I can still hear people. So they were trying to talk to me. And in my head, I'm like, I'm not taking my headphones out. This is a symbol. Like at some point they're going to give up. Then he puts his hand on my thigh and he starts like moving up my thigh. And I whip out my headphones. I'm like, what the fuck why are you touching me?
Yeah.
And he is like, I'm just trying to tell you that you're pretty. And I'm like, I don't need to know that. You don't need to be touching me to tell me that I'm pretty. And he's like, well, with what you're wearing, like you're saying that you want to be touched. I'm like, no. I'm like, I could be naked and that doesn't mean that I want some stranger to be touching me. And he's like, well, in my country, you would actually be killed for what you're wearing. And I was like, well, we're not in your country, are we?
Right.
We're in Canada where women have rights and women have the right to wear what they want and not get assaulted.
True.
So,
or at least that's what we expect.
Well, yes.
I mean, that happens. It's unfortunate, but that's not something that you expect to happen, right?
Yeah. So that's what I mean is like that mindset sometimes when you start bringing in a lot of people from one population with such a different mindset and they are not wanting to kind of, I don't want to say assimilate because assimilate has a really bad image because of what, we did to natives and stuff. So I don't want to say assimilate because I'm not saying that, but it's kind of like getting on board with the country that you're in.
Mhm.
So if you know that women have rights here, women can dress however they want,
Mhm.
you should be respecting that. But I've noticed that a lot of times that's not the case. And I think it's because there's such large communities with the same mindset
Mhm.
that it bleeds into here.
To be honest, I was just as shocked as you were, because I'll give the country Philippines that. I don't know what's going on there. I've never been back ever since I moved out of that country, but that country was really beautiful. I'll tell you
Mhm.
that. And now, if I'm to compare with your experience and some of the experience that I've witnessed in this country and in Pakistan, the education level of that country was top notch.
Mhm.
It's a poor country, they say. People are poor. The country is probably rich. The people are poor because of their
Oh, yeah.
lifestyle. Um, um, the schools were amazing. The teachers were amazing. I personally have not heard anyone in my circle, and I have a lot of friends, like female, male, both,
Yeah.
who were sexually abused during my time, at least, or at least in my class.
Right.
Um, Other than that, the things that we would hear about the abuse from outside on the news, and it never really appealed to me or some of the friends that I have, male friends, and they're very few actually, that how can you seek pleasure when a woman is uncomfortable? That's the notion I have.
Well, because for them, it's like they get off to women being scared or uncomfortable because they want that power. It's just like a lot of rapists. It's because it's the power and the control that gets them off. They
And that's
enjoy
and
that.
that's what I got to know when I was
Yeah.
after probably the age of 25 or 26, when I had a few friends who shared their experience similar to yours, and that's when I probably put two and two together. Probably these people are fucking psychos, you know?
Mhm.
I mean, for me, if you want to make love to a woman, you would want to do it in a nice way. You would probably be more comfortable if she's comfortable. You're gonna
Yeah.
probably enjoy it more if she's enjoying it. When what they're doing or what other people are doing, when you see a woman even looking at them like this, you actually lost all the chances that you
Yeah.
even had of her probably even admiring you. She now does not give a fuck you're 6'2". She does not give a fuck
Yeah.
you're rich or not. Now you're staring at her in a bad way,
Yeah.
and you're trying to just eat her from your eyes, which what people do, and you're already imagining what you could do with a woman. That is just so not attractive to me as a man, let alone a woman. I could only imagine what she goes
Oh,
through.
yeah. So even just yesterday, so I go to a gym in Scarborough, and Scarborough has a very large, um, in mostly Indian population.
Let's call them brown so they don't feel bad, because people could be from
Yeah.
Pakistan and
No, but I'm saying, but here's the thing is I know,
you know
like,
that.
I know
Okay.
a lot of brown people and I know, like, I know the
Yeah.
difference, but that's why I'm focusing on Indian because I've noticed it a lot more with Indians.
Okay.
Is, yeah, like yesterday I went to the gym and there's this guy from me and my boyfriend, we always go to the gym together. Now with how I feel in the gym, I would never go, like, I wouldn't want to go by myself, especially at night because of my experience there. So we get out of the car and there's this older Indian guy, like, I mean, like in his 60s.
Really?
And he's coming in jeans and a button up. And you know those guys, I'm like, I don't think you're really like here to work
Here to
out.
work out, yeah.
The minute I get out of my car, I'm wearing shorts and a sports bra, which like in gyms nowadays is
It's
pretty standard.
pretty common, yeah. I mean,
Yeah. He's staring at me to the point where he almost trips.
wow.
And he just keeps looking and staring at me. And my boyfriend's like, oh my God. Cause like I always tell him like that this happens to me at the gym, but he doesn't, we work out, we go to the gym together, but we work out in different areas. So he doesn't really witness it. But he witnessed it walking up the stairs. So he's like, oh my God, I'm going to keep my eye on this guy to see how much he does it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now I go to Fit for Less is 24 hours. So they have the turnstiles for when it's not employed.
I also go to Planet Fitness because it's 24 hours, because
Oh,
sometimes
okay.
I'm in a mood to go at 12. So that's one place that's open.
Yeah. So do they also have the turnstiles where you do your card to get in? So it's like more secure?
Oh, no. It's actually in downtown. I live in downtown, right?
Oh.
So I don't even take my car to the gym. I just walk. It's like 10 minutes, 5 minutes away from my place.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So for this, so there's a little area with the turnstiles to get inside. We got to scan your card to get in so they know you're not a random person coming into the gym.
Okay.
But there's a little area where there's a little door here for a handicap entrance. But because it's like a clear door so you can
I
see
think I
through.
even know the location you're mentioning.
Yeah, it's Morningside and Kingston Road.
Yeah. I know that Fit for Less.
Yeah. So we're up there waiting again in the turnstile and we can see him near the handicap area. He's still just
staring at you.
Like full stare, no breaking his gaze.
Mm.
So then I'm looking. So what has started happening to me lately is what you were saying, like how they almost like being making you uncomfortable, and how women like tend to look away or be like, eh. But I realized, I'm like, well, no, that's giving them what they want. So now I just stare back.
Okay.
I'm like, I'm not going to be a victim. I'm not going to cower away. You're making me uncomfortable. I'm going to make you uncomfortable. So I just stared right back at him.
Mm-hmm.
He did not break once until he just started walking away. So then I'm on the Stairmaster, which is back here, and he's on the treadmill over here. So he can't see me anymore. But he keeps doing one of these, looking back at me.
Mm-hmm.
Then some other girl comes in her shorts and whatever, and she's sitting at the treadmill putting on her running shoes. And I see him, like I have a perfect view of him. So he's just like this looking at her the entire time, like not breaking gaze at her. So I finally go up to her and I'm saying this loudly so he hears me. And I'm saying, that man right there in the jeans, he has not stopped staring at you since you came in here. He did it to me before. He's doing it to you. Go on a treadmill over here now. And then she's like, oh my God, thank you so much. Like, that's super creepy. And then he heard me say that. And then he stopped looking at me till he went off the treadmill. Then he started walking back and forth in the gym, staring at me again. So I said, is there something that I can help you with? Why do you keep fucking staring at me? Like, you're really creepy. And I'm not okay with it. And at some point, my boyfriend's like 6'2", really muscular. So he wouldn't hurt anyone, but people don't know that. Yeah. So I'm like, I'm going to bring my boyfriend over here and you're not going to have eyes soon. And then I made him uncomfortable and he walked out.
So yeah, it's sad that be it people from you know just different countries coming in here, or in general in everywhere in the world that you see, there are men actually who do this and they're comfortable and they don't see any issue in this, whereas you know there are a lot of people who could not even understand it, just like me. I really don't understand why they do it. I'm not saying I'm the best out there. Probably I don't know what it's like to not get a woman, but I've been single for a lot of years of my life.
Yeah.
No matter how mentally you want to be with someone, and you know, you just crave for that partner, or you just want to have a girlfriend, but nowhere in my life, no matter how much I wanted to be with someone, came a point that I would be like, you know what, I'll just, you know, rather just do this. You know, I'd seek pleasure in it, because there's no pleasure in that.
No,
there's literally no pleasure.
It's just predatory.
Yeah, it's I don't even know that term if back then, but I would just call it like, you know, it's just not appealing to me, and I would rather stay single than have, because there's an image of myself that I carry.
Yeah.
I don't care what you think about it, but there's an image. Everyone has that. Everyone has an image of themselves in their brain.
Yeah.
So for me, that image could be, again, I'm not saying I am or I want to be, but I could be a druggie.
Yeah.
Okay. I could be someone who's verbally abusive. I'm very verbally abusive with in general.
Yeah.
Like I right now I have not probably abused and used that word yet, but generally when I talk to my friends, it's more like, oh yeah, fuck you, this.
Yeah.
So I usually have those swearing words whenever I talk. It comes out in my anger. It comes out even when I'm happy. It's just generally there. I'm still okay with that. People calling me you're verbally abusive. I'm still okay with that notion. I'm okay with you calling me probably not smart, but I will never be okay someone telling me that I'm a predator, or I'm here to exploit women. I will never be okay. So that's something that I pride one thing about myself, and I could never live my life like that and have someone to call me that, let alone be in that experience to know that these people are looking at me. What the fuck am I doing?
Well, most normal people wouldn't ever be in that scenario, because most people's minds don't work that way. But the thing is with these people, and the gym is honestly the worst for it, because, well, at least the gym that I go to, because there is this huge population where people don't really understand the culture here, not even just here, but North America. Women are not, you know, objects to look at like that.
That's a good point.
And I think that's the issue, is that as immigration has increased here, I've noticed the change. Like as a woman growing up, I never had that.
Yeah.
And then even like when I was in college is kind of when it really started, when immigration started really picking up. And that's when I started feeling uncomfortable. And it was a really weird thing, because I had never felt that way before. And I'm like, you know, I have friends of so many different races. I've worked with so many different races and I've never felt uncomfortable. Everyone is the same. We're all North Americans. We all have that same like mindset.
Yeah.
What's okay? What's not okay?
Correct. Yeah.
You know,
As a human being, you just probably have some things that you're okay with, which is why I think when we spoke over the phone, we also connected on this point on immigration, which I would like to speak in a bit, but I'd just like to wrap the segment before this. It's not only that what you wear is a problem, it's actually the mindset. I actually now agree to it because in my country, in Pakistan, sure, women now probably dress more openly, and by openly I mean, they can probably wear short sleeves, they're wearing shorts, they're probably somewhat trying to or just wearing clothes which are more revealing, which is okay. It's their preference, their choice. You can choose to be with them, choose not to be with them. You have your own theory because that country is Islamic, right? So it's more like religion is something that they have it in their constitution as well. So sure, it's up to you, whatever you want to do. You want to judge them in your own mind that she probably could be a slut or a whore, sure. But I don't think that still gives you the right to just touch them and molest them just because she's wearing revealing clothes. Right? And then my point is, when women were not wearing revealing clothes, I saw men touch them.
They were still getting, I know, and that's the thing.
What's the problem here? This is the problem.
Well, I'll bring it back to even my rape case. When I was in court, they were trying me, a child. They were trying to ask me what I was wearing.
See,
I'm like, what do you mean? What was I wearing? I'm a child. No one asked to get raped by their father. Like, why is this even a question? And I was like, I was wearing flannel, like fluffy flannel pajamas with penguins on it, like pretty kiddish. Like, I wasn't asking for it, if that's what you're trying to insinuate.
Yo, when we were growing up, like we would literally, boxers are a trend nowadays.
Yeah.
We would wear those underwears as a child. Like me, my sister, I've seen us just wear those underwears and roam around the house.
Yeah.
Right? And it's unfortunate also nowadays, which is a good thing. I should not say it's unfortunate in that aspect, but it's unfortunate we have come to a point where parents, it's good that they do this. They tell their children, make sure no one touches you. Because when I was growing up, our uncles, our aunts, my father's friends would just pick us up.
Yeah.
And my parents would never object. Because that mindset was not there, that he could actually molest us.
Yeah.
And we're really blessed, touch wood, that maybe we just had really good relatives. My father really made good friends who were not of that mindset, who would just take advantage. My father, I remember, his friend called him late at night that I could not sleep. My wife is away, and I'm scared. I'm usually not used to it. He was a bit older. And my father's like, yeah, sure. What do you want me to do? He's like, can you ask your son to come over? Can you drop him? Not even once my father questioned that he might probably sexually abuse my child. And not even once it crossed my head that this person could actually do that to me. And we would just go stay there for 3 nights, 4 nights, and they would take us out, treat us food, drinks, whatever we wanted, and we would come back home happy like a child. So none of that happened to me, which is why when I hear these stories from people who are my age, you're younger to me, but we're more like the same generation. We come from the same generation. And I've never experienced that shit. Neither I believe any of my relatives did or my cousins did. And it's so shocking that nowadays you have to actually draw the line that even now I am cautious. Whenever I see a child, I actually think twice before complimenting the kid. Even if she's like an 8-9-year-old, or even if I want to pick her up or something or play with her, I'm so cautious that what if I touch her with good intention and the parents think that I'm doing something wrong? So I avoid it. Yeah,
well, and I think kind of like what you're saying about how now that's a thing where we're kind of respecting, like not picking up kids and stuff, is we're teaching kids consent, even with their family. And I know there's some people like older than us who would think that's crazy. Like if someone doesn't hug their uncle or their aunt, it's considered rude.
Yeah.
But nowadays, our generation is teaching them, well, you don't have to hug that person.
Yeah.
It's your body. You have autonomy of your own body.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's a double-edged sword where it's like, it's unfortunate that we have to kind of look at life in that lens, but it's also good that we're teaching kids from a young age that they have autonomy over their own bodies. Because I think that's something that we didn't have growing up, where we would have to do things we didn't want to, even if it made us uncomfortable. So double-edged sword. The reasoning kind of sucks, but I think it's also good to instill that in
Yeah, because
kids.
I would rather have these people that level of restriction than someone coming out and having an experience that you did, or
Yeah.
some of the friends that the people that I know in the past who went through the similar experience that you did. I would rather them not. I would rather them have or take consent from the person
Yeah.
before touching them, rather than later getting to know, oh, he actually molested.
Yeah, exactly.
You
Whenever
know?
I see kids,
So
I'm
it's
like,
choose between the two. What do you want?
exactly.
I would love my kids, if I have any in the future, to play with anyone that they see, be it
Yeah.
older men, women, whoever it is, as long as they're friendly to you.
Yeah.
Sure, go play with them. But now I'm scared.
Yeah,
You know?
exactly.
Well, what if there's like that 0.1% chance of that person doing that, and then who am I supposed to blame? Because that child is now fucked.
Exactly.
Now that child's childhood is fucked.
Yeah.
He's not gonna have a healthy, or she's not gonna have a healthy childhood anymore.
Yeah.
And as and when she grows, she's probably gonna doubt herself or himself. And who am I supposed to blame at that time? Because the child's gonna look up to me and say, "Dad, you were supposed to protect me."
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. No, it's a hard
You know,
one.
Yeah, it's a hard one, right? Which is why I again, like I said, it's in my disclaimer. I'm not here to promote any group, any person, or any celebrity here. But in the midst of this, there's this person called Andrew Tate. I don't know if you heard
Oh
about
my
him.
gosh, don't even get me started on
Right?
Andrew Tate.
Okay, so I really don't know what you think about him. But for me, it's like I take out the good out of him, and I leave whatever bad he's done,
Right.
or if he's even done any, because I follow him a lot. And for me, he's changed my life in some aspects, especially when he brings in the traditional masculinity of standing up for your family, for the
Yeah.
woman that you love, and probably even if she earns or not, it's up to her. But you have to have that mindset that you're the provider, you're
Yeah.
the protector. So I agree to that. You need to work out every fucking day, no matter what and how you feel. I agree to that.
Yeah.
And he's going through some cases right now in the court. And his only point that I would like to quote here is that what you went through when you said they only gave your abuser, which was your own father, just 6 months probation, is exactly what he says, that when you make such sensitive cases
Mm-hmm.
so openly being laughed at now
Yeah.
at these days, because those women who the government thought or just put on him that he probably raped,
Mm-hmm.
we're the ones who said we never made those complaints or backed
Right.
out from those complaints. So now it draws a line that for women like you, that we actually suffered,
Yeah.
and our voice is not being taken seriously.
Yeah.
Whereas people who are just saying that for fun are getting away with, even let alone Andrew Tate. Let's see what happened to Johnny Depp.
Yeah, see, and
With Amber Heard, right?
that is the thing. It's so hard because and this is something that I've always felt this way about, where people are like, they have that whole like believe women movement.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I agree. Our first thought should be to believe women when they're coming forward with these things, because it's hard to come forward with these things. But unfortunately, it's hard because there are some women with ill intentions.
Yeah.
Whether it be personal vendettas or wanting to get clout or something. So it's like, it's hard because it's like, yes, we should believe women, but we can't always. So it's like it's this hard line of what do you do?
So I think this actually puts pressure on the justice system. This actually should put pressure on the people who we vote for.
Yeah.
They should make sure that when things like this happen, they need to make sure how the cases are judged, how the evidence is probably taken into consideration, and if when people, let alone if the person is proven guilty or not, but a person coming up and admitting his
that
guilt,
they're guilty, yeah.
Dude, do something about it,
Yeah.
Punish him in a way that if this gets spread, publicly shame them, have them on the news, so that people who even have the slightest chance of doing something, they know that, this is like make it or break it. You're not going to get away. I personally think I might be called out for this and have some people bashing me out, but I personally think this is the worst you can do to a human. You're better off killing a person. Just kill the person.
Yeah, that's funny because my boyfriend said the same thing the other day, because we were talking about that doctor, the female doctor in India that got
yeah
that he was like, I know it sounds bad, but good thing she's dead, because how would you want to live after what happened to her?
Yeah.
Like, it was brutal the way
Yeah.
they found her. And I'm like, that's true. Like, my case, like, did it fuck me up? For sure. It took away my childhood. It made me untrusting of men
Many
and
years, you
whatever.
probably just trying to fix yourself, you know?
Yeah, but it's like, but if it was a way more violent
Mhm.
thing, it's like, that's a lot for someone to deal with. Or especially if you end up having physical disfigurements. Like, for me, I have this scar on my head from just like physical abuse where my
Mhm.
dad cut me with a knife. But even that's hard to look at every single day in the mirror. But I couldn't imagine it being tied to
Yeah.
something like that. Like, so what you're saying, I do get it, where sometimes you just feel like it's almost better, as fucked up as that is to say.
Yeah, and I actually say it in a different way too. I would rather have the punishment more severe for things or abuse like this, like rape, than murder. I
Yeah,
mean, because in murder the person's gone. Sure, that's really wrong. Give them a punishment for life, whatever you want to do. But for such cases, I think you should give them equally
hmm,
stringent punishment, because if you're letting them lose, that means you're letting us know that this person can do it again.
exactly. There's no deterrence. And I think that's, again, that's something that makes me lose pride in Canada and our justice system, is there's no deterrence. Like,
It's actually an issue in the United States too.
yeah, but I just mean, like, even here, when you look at like other crimes, the
Yeah.
whole, how everyone's calling it a catch and release program. And it essentially is, because people, they get caught, they're out on bail the same day or the next day. And then, like, all the carjackers, they caught 2 carjackers that have already been arrested 8 times previously for the same crime.
Mhm.
Why do you keep letting them out? There's no deterrent from committing crimes here.
Correct.
And it's crazy. And it's like, however people feel, politically about Trump or whatever.
Mhm.
But one thing that I was like, he's doing it right, is he said that in the States, for child predators,
Mhm.
rapists, it's like death penalty, because
True.
you ruin a person.
True.
It's like you essentially kill a person when you do that. They're no
Right.
longer who they
Are.
were.
Or you don't even know how that person could have turned out. Like,
Exactly.
we would never know now the Renee that could have probably done so much better in life, or probably something else, something really different. Probably you would not be in modeling. Probably you would be something else if that trauma was not there. We never know now.
Well, for me,
We'll never know.
this is one thing I always say, and I guess maybe in somehow it could be like contradicting myself.
Yeah.
But I always say that I wouldn't change a single thing that happened to me, because
Okay.
it made me who I
you are.
am. It put a head on my shoulders.
Mhm.
It made me want to be an independent person.
Mhm.
Like I said, growing up, my grandmother was always like, "You're just gonna marry rich. You're never gonna get a job." She always tried to tell me to get a boob job when I was like 16, because like
Mm.
guys like
Wow.
boobs, so you need to do that. Like, just
And that too coming from your own.
yeah, and telling me, you got to wear makeup so that you're prettier and all this stuff. And it's like, after everything that happened to me, the abuse and stuff, and seeing my dad and my grandfather, like the 2 men in my lives, were really fucking disappointing excuses of humans.
Yeah.
So I was like, why would I ever want to put myself in that situation again, where I'm at the mercy of a man? Like,
Yeah.
it made me want to take school seriously. So that's why I went to school for biochem, because I love science. I'm a science nerd.
Mm.
So I'm modeling, yes, but it wasn't my original plan. And if I could be a full-time model right now and like, be Kendall Jenner level, would I? Yes, like in a heartbeat. But I always have school to fall back on, because it was a passion of mine as well.
Mhm.
And it's always there.
Yeah.
Whereas modeling's not. So what as much as what happened to me sucks and has affected me, I think it's made me a very strong person, and has also made me a stronger person for other people. Like I said, when I was in school and I was talking to these women about,
Mhm.
you're not alone. This happened to me. This is how I got through it. A lot of those women came up to me later and said, you helped me find my inner strength to do more with my life. I was going down a wrong path, whereas now I want to get an education. I want to be independent. I don't want to have to rely on another man
Mhm.
and all that stuff. So I look at it kind of like, it made me who I am today, and it sucks, but who knows? I could have been a way more immature person.
Yeah.
I could have fallen down my grandma's path, where I just married some rich asshole and
Yeah.
continued being abused.
Yeah.
And, so
Yeah, there's always good in something, and I'm really although I don't know you, but I'm really proud that you think like that. So, fist bump. We would like to discuss the issues that we have related to immigration, because that's actually how I found you on
yes.
social media, and that's how I decided I'm gonna call you, because you comment on a lot of things that is happening around Canada in general, or around the city that we live in, Toronto. And it's great to see your comments because I feel that you love the country, so you probably want the best for the country and for the people. So when you see things happening around, you are very vocal about it,
Yeah.
even though you're in a you're putting yourself out there in the line of fire, which you've shared with me, the comments and what people think about you. So would you like to share that with the viewers, please?
Yeah, I mean, they say that when women are in their 30s is when they really come into their own and they stop caring about what other people have to say. I would say that's been me lately as I'm getting
Mm-hmm.
close to 30. All those
Mm-hmm.
comments I post. Um, yeah, mostly on Six Buzz because that's where all these things come up because that's our news nowadays because of the regulations on news being out there.
Correct.
But yeah, it's just kind of like, for example, a recent comment of mine that I had that and you're starting to notice the shift because originally people would be mad at you for saying these things, but now you have people that are kind of supporting what you're saying. So
Mm-hmm.
that's when I'm starting to realize there's a shift overall.
Mm-hmm.
We're starting to realize that there may be a problem. One of my recent comments was because they changed the amount of work that the amount of work hours for international students
Mm-hmm.
from to 24 hours. It was originally 20 hours. And then during COVID, there was no restrictions and now it's 24 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So I commented saying like, it's really because a lot of people are saying that that's not okay. How are they supposed to live?
Mm-hmm.
It's not acceptable, and basically saying they're victims.
They're protesting,
I know that they're
right?
victims. I know.
Yeah.
So that I'll touch on that after. But this specific comment really got me lately, because a lot of people are saying that's not right. Like they come to this country, they need to live, and I'm like, are people forgetting what it means to be an international student? Is that you're here to study, you're not here to work. And in order to get into the country as an international student,
Mm-hmm.
you're supposed to show documents that show that you can financially support yourself
Correct.
while you're here. But what's been happening with just a certain demographic of international students is they're coming in with falsified documents
Mm-hmm.
and they can't support themselves. So that's why these work hours being cut
Yeah.
is really screwing them over. But it was supposed to be a nice bonus for you to be able to work here because there's a
Right.
lot of countries that don't let you work, period.
Yeah.
Because you're taking jobs from people who live in this country. And it's also like part of it is that businesses and the government's to blame because they do exploit these international students by having cheap labor.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, they wouldn't be able to exploit that if you came here on proper grounds and not falsifying documents.
Yeah.
So, I don't I have no sympathy for this whole, oh, poor me, I can't work enough hours to live here. When it was supposed to be a nice bonus in your pocket, you're supposed
Yeah.
to be able to support yourself, but you falsified documents.
Yeah. I mean, I'm from the same community, so I think it's more like I have the license to kill because I'm on the same boat as them because we're probably talking about predominantly the people coming from India and Pakistan,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
The brown community who we see are marching and protesting outside, on roads and disturbing the rest of the folks.
Yeah.
And they're doing it as if they own the fucking country,
Yeah. And there's, and, I've seen signs saying, don't blame the victims. And it's like, you guys aren't victims because to be an international student is a privilege. You get to, you have enough, you're supposed to have enough money to buy this privilege of studying in a different country.
Correct.
So to call yourself a victim doesn't make sense because you should actually be in a privileged position.
Yeah.
But because you falsified your grounds of being here, you made yourself a victim.
It's actually a huge business. You don't. I happen to know a lot of people. I would not name them. There's the same line of work that they work as immigration consultants.
Yeah.
And they actually figure out ways on how you can get to this country.
Yeah.
And again, I want to point this out before people say, "Oh, yeah, you're also one of those privileged people." Yes, I am. I'm very much privileged that I was sitting in my country and I got a permanent residency.
Yeah.
For Canada. I submitted my documents, whatever the requirements were. I came through the legal channels.
Yeah.
And I was granted the residency before coming into the country.
Mhm.
And ever since then, I've lived in this country. I did struggle a bit looking for jobs.
Yeah.
But not even once I complained because who am I to complain? I chose to leave my country.
Yeah.
I came here during the midst of COVID, July 2020. I decided, and I knew at the back of my head, I probably might not be able to secure a job, and that too in the same field that I was in.
Yeah.
And still. So I was like, yeah, but whatever it is, I want to start my life over. I'm gonna face whatever struggles come my way. And till date, I tell people that we're actually very blessed that we got it so easy, that we're part of the system just like anyone else now. I'm
Yeah.
like part of whatever rights you have. I have the
Yeah.
equal rights now, right? I can vote. I can go to the authorities and complain about something that you
Yeah.
also might be able to complain. So that's a privilege. And I'm
Mhm.
very, very thankful to the government for that. And I'm not only thankful in a way that I pay my taxes, I do that because it's something that you have to,
Yeah.
and I'm okay with that. But I have a lot of friends in my circle who actually complain paying taxes, and I was
Yeah.
like, why do you complain? Are you able to earn whatever you're earning back home? If
Yeah.
you are, then why are you
Well,
here?
not only that, but if you're living, you should be supporting the country that you're living in. You should be supporting the country that you call home.
Just accept whatever the rules are, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. We are not the one who make the rules, and if we're the only one who can decide we want to be in this country or not.
Yeah.
So if we have decided to be in the country, it's just up to us now to accept things how they are. We're
Yeah.
not supposed to tweak or try to influence the people who have been here for years, for generations, for that matter. People from my country probably have not come here and fought for anything, whereas probably your lineage somewhere somehow were part of the struggles that this country went through, and to making it what it is today. So I still feel that people like you should have more right than I do,
Mm-hmm.
because I have just been blessed and been given this status based on my education and
Yeah.
my career.
Yeah.
And probably this country thinks that bringing people like me would help the economy, and I'm thankful for that, and I forever will be. But at the same time, I don't want to forget that we should not take that for granted. And
Yeah.
people like what we were just mentioning right now, students who are coming in, they feel like they already own the country. They feel
Yeah.
like, oh, why are we not allowed to get residency in this way when it was allowed back then? Yo, whatever it was,
Yeah.
the people, the regulators, the people who are running the country have the right to decide what to change, when to change,
Mm-hmm.
and we as outsiders are just to obey them.
Yeah.
So I agree with you 100% that when you're doing such things, when you're commenting, because there was also a point you mentioned that in your line of work you get more hatred from people who are not white or black. You get more hatred from people who are brown.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that happens a lot. And I think it's just, again, like I was working on set for a music video a few months ago, and my agent sent me out to this. My agent sent out my photo, my stats, everything to this artist, to this Punjabi artist. And he wanted me. So one of those things that's included is my height, my measurements, like my waist, my hips. And again, he's looking at photos of me. I get on set and he's shaming me. He's saying, like, do you go to the gym? Do you work out? Like, I go to the gym like 5 days a week. And mind you, he is like 5'4" and like chubbier.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, why are you commenting? Like, good for you. You go to the gym. Everyone should go to the gym. But why are you like insinuating that I don't
Yep.
work out, that I don't go to the gym, that there's something wrong with my body?
Mm-hmm.
And then we had a pizza lunch, and he's like, do you want pizza? I was like, yeah, I'm gonna have a slice because I can't have dairy anymore. It's part of what came with my lupus. But
Okay.
I was like, I'll have one slice. And then he's like, oh, really? You're gonna have that? I don't eat food like that. And I'm like, what is happening? And then he starts shaming me because I was taller than him. He's like, I was previously talking to a girl and she was like
Insecure.
she was 5'5", so I should have just went with her. So I'm standing here like, you chose me and you're here insulting my body, insulting my height.
Uh-huh.
And then he's like, well, like in my culture, women are shorter. I'm like, that's fine.
That's good, yeah.
But why pick me and then come here and just shame me about it?
Yeah. But there was
So-
also one incident you said you were modeling for one of the brands that
Ooh.
I remember that.
Yes. So this was, again, when I was in high school. I was in grade 12. And at that time, I was just, my whole life, I've definitely had less white friends than any other race.
Okay.
But a lot of times, like in my friend groups, I was friends with like brown people from like all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
So I never really thought anything of it
Mm-hmm.
per se. So I was approached by an Indian designer saying, hey, I want you to model my new collection of saris.
Mm-hmm.
And in my mind, I was like, oh my God, yes, I've always wanted to model a sari that's so colorful and
Yeah.
pretty, and the jewelry. So I was really excited. And then the day came along And I was there, and the women who were there were telling me the stories of their wedding days and what the traditions and all the culture, the cultural significance of the Indian weddings.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh, wow, it's cool. Like, I never knew any of that. Because at that point, I mean, I've been to a lot of Indian weddings now, but at that point, I never was. So I was like, wow, this is so cool. It's like a real party. Everyone's so beautiful. The colors, like the jewelry is insane. We went through the shoot. I posted the photos, and I got severely canceled. People who follow me on social media will definitely remember this because it was a big deal, because it was originally started by girls who were in my high school. Ironically, my boyfriend's ex-girlfriend
Okay. Okay.
she's Indian, but she started this witch hunt against me, saying, you know, oh, you culturally appropriated Indian culture. You shouldn't be modeling a sari. You took that job from an Indian model. And then I said, well, it was an Indian designer and all Indian team. They chose me. And then she's saying, well, you shouldn't have taken it then. And it's just like, well, I'm a model. I was excited to do it. I've always found the saris and now the cultural significance beautiful. Like, I don't understand why you're turning this positive and beautiful thing into a negative thing. So then, you know how white girls tend to jump onto like woke culture?
Yeah.
So a bunch of white girls started coming at me from school, like, yeah, like you're basically Hitler, you're a Nazi. I'm like, how did me modeling a sari turn me into Hitler?
Yeah.
Like, I'm so confused about that jump you just did. And then it gained so much traction because this was on Twitter where it really went crazy. So then random people started jumping in on it, and then everyone was calling me a racist. I'm like, if I was racist, I wouldn't be modeling a sari. Like, I wouldn't want to wear a sari if I was racist. How are you? Like, I don't understand what's happening to me. And then my friends who, like, I had Indian friends who jumped in and said, listen, she's not racist. She's just working.
She's got a job. I mean,
she's working.
Yeah.
And they're like, I've known her for so many years. She's not racist at all. But then he got in trouble. So it's just like, it's this weird culture of like just getting in trouble for doing things that it's weird because we're supposed to be a multicultural and diverse country.
Yeah.
But you need to stay within your lane. But I find it only works for, like, that's only towards white people. Because then I had some other, I'm just going to say brown because I don't know what background they were from, but they were saying like, well, you should only model white Eastern wedding gowns. And I was like, okay, but then you shouldn't model white Western wedding gowns. And like, oh, well, like Western culture has no culture.
Okay, then why be here?
And I'm like, but if that's the case, then why did you say I should only model white wedding gowns? Because you're insinuating that's my culture because I'm white. So
it's like also, then I don't blame the people or the white community, or for that matter, any community, saying, why are these people taking up jobs at Tim Hortons?
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
I've seen people complain about it, then I should not be blaming those people, because then I also defend that these people coming from India and Pakistan are actually more workaholic.
Yeah.
There's no doubt in that.
Yeah.
They're more giving to their time, which is again a downfall, because these people are ready to do or take up more work than required.
Yeah.
And they eat up another job of someone else. So for example, there's a position for two. This person will be doing it.
Yeah.
Right? A single person be doing two jobs or two line of work. And the companies or the institutions or these people who hire them get away by paying less salary. So that job could probably be for someone else.
Yeah.
Now that person could be brown, black, white, whoever it is. But it's a hard fact that people from my country and from India come here and take advantage of these places and these institutions, and they work at a very minimum wage or lower than what's supposed to be taken, because this is an entire circle. I want the people to understand, those who don't. I think now everyone does, but it's an entire circle connected.
Yeah.
That if you're taking less wage just to secure a job and do more work, which is probably not ethical and which is not a healthy lifestyle to be in, but they're doing that, how are these people living here? Now it relates to the housing crisis.
Yes.
Because these people are living in a basement with like 10 other dudes.
Yeah.
Right? And I've actually witnessed this. Not many people know about this part of my life, that there was a time my sister told me, yo, you can't just be sitting there jobless. This was back in 2020. So I joined Amazon in the warehouse.
Yeah.
So I quit after 21 days. Sorry, and not quit. I got terminated. I stopped going after 21 days, and they terminated me. And the reason I could not continue, although it was paying really well, way more than minimum wage. They're really good in terms of that, but the environment was unfortunately not as healthy that I expected it to be, because and again, not trying to call out, but it was 99% Indians
Yeah.
and brown people and Pakistanis. And it was such a toxic culture that you're just there working like robots.
Yeah.
And when I never had a car back then, and I went back with a guy on Uber, and he was brown, and I asked him, where do you live? He's like, yeah, just close by. And I was like, yeah, you want to stop by here? Let's grab some food. He's like, oh, no, I'm not gonna grab food. So I was like, it's okay, I'll pay for it. He's like, no, I don't want you to pay for it. It's just gonna be, too much, and it's gonna be out of my budget. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, from whatever he used to earn, he used to send at least 50% back home. He's a student. He's a student who's supposed to come here for education.
Study, yeah.
But I don't even know if he was continuing his education. Probably that's how easy his education was. Probably did not require much time. So he used to send 50% of his income back home. So I'm like, 50%. So you're left with X amount. That amount was probably around 1,100.
Yeah.
So I was like, what do you do with the 1,100, bro? That's rent money. He's like, what do you mean? I pay $350 in rent. I was like, where the fuck are you staying?
Probably just a bed somewhere.
It was a bed in a room.
Yeah, exactly.
Shared with 3 other men. So he was the 4th guy in that room.
Yep.
Imagine.
Yep.
So he pays $350 for that. So I was like, what about food? He's like, we all accumulate the groceries, and that comes down to about $250 to $300 a month. And that's his food expense. And then he told me, oh yeah, so he told me now what happens is 3 or 4 out of the people who were living in that house shared one vehicle.
Oh,
and that was a Mustang. And they would pitch in money for that Mustang and the insurance and just drive it around.
Oh my
so
gosh.
That's how they used to live. That's how the mindset was. So these people are coming not to better their lifestyle or the quality of their lifestyle. They're actually here coming to just worsen the economy to the point that people like you who've been born and brought up here, who probably have a different notion on how the work life would be. You'll probably get paid better.
Yeah.
You'll go back home. You can afford a mortgage, or for that matter, rent, pay for your education, your children's education, blah, blah, blah. But that is nowhere to be found anymore, because you're competing with people who do not give a fuck about how they live.
Yes.
So the quality of life that you see right now in Canada is not at its best.
No, it's drastically decreased. And it's like what you're saying is they'll take these jobs, and it's often the work of 2 people and for less pay. And it's hard because it's like I get it, like you need to live here, so you're taking those jobs. But at the same time, you're driving down the wages for everyone else around us.
Correct.
You're driving down, which directly affects our life. Like we can't afford to live. The cost of living, we can't make as much money as we used to. And I'm not going to say what job, obviously, but I had a job before where me and my Black coworker were diversity hires. And for me, that is so crazy in Canada.
So crazy.
That for white and Black to be the diversity hire.
Yeah.
Like that's crazy. Because when I was growing up, I mostly noticed like Canada was a lot of white and Black. That's mostly what it was. And then, you had the Asians starting to come in and stuff, and then they became a lot of population. But never did I expect white and Black to be the diversity hire. Like that was really eye-opening to me. I was like, that's crazy.
Like, my question to these people is, you've lived in your country. I have lived in my country, so I'll just speak for Pakistan. Not a single fucking Pakistani would allow that. Not a single person would allow that. White people coming into our country and taking our jobs. Now people are going to say, oh yeah, they conquered our country. Yeah, dude, they conquered our country like 350 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, I know that argument
happened. We allowed it too probably back then. We allowed it, right? We just surrendered ourselves in front of these people probably because they were mighty, wealthy, and stronger than us. So we did surrender. There was a time we got out of it. So when we got out of it, after that, let's talk about 1947. Were you able to accept any other culture for that matter? No.
Yeah.
You were so stringent that till date, even Pakistanis living in Pakistan cannot speak for themselves because of how religion is
Yeah.
predominantly being used everywhere.
Hmm.
So it's sad. So let alone, I could only imagine a white person coming and taking my job over there.
Yeah.
Oh, that's gonna be a tough time. Whereas right now, we were talking the other day. A lot of people in MNCs are mainly Indians,
Hmm.
whether they were born in that country or not, but they're Indian heritage or
Yeah.
lineage from, right, and they're CEOs, CFOs, because they're hardworking. But we never seen a white guy, or a brown guy, or or a black person march in on the streets and saying, why is this guy made the CEO
Yeah.
of a company like Microsoft or Apple?
Yeah.
You have accepted them because of their education and qualification. But when it comes to people like you just probably dressed and modeled for an Indian sari, and these Indians get so fucking attacked
Yeah.
that they feel like, oh yeah, how dare she? What do you mean, how dare she? She's living in the same country, she's paying the same fucking taxes, she got an opportunity, she availed it. So what's the problem here?
Yeah.
It's not that she's probably doing something wrong with the sari. Had you been probably just disrespecting it or the culture, I would probably not support you or defend you, because shaming or bashing any culture in that way is something that this country does not promote, which is why
Yeah.
it's diverse, right? You're
Exactly.
welcoming to it. But then you having less privilege being a person of this country is something unfortunate nowadays.
Yeah, and it's been really weird because even it's so annoying because like I feel like as a white person, if you have any comments on anything that's outside of our culture, you're automatically deemed racist. And it's like, I'm like, for me, it's like, I believe in everything being equal. And I
Yeah.
think, and for me, I think diversity is a good thing because that's how you learn
Yeah.
new things. That's how you grow. That's like, it's so important. But now we've gone to a point where it's not diversity anymore. It's, we're, it's one specific like race dominating
Yeah.
and going against other people. Like it's this weird thing that I don't really understand why it's happening, and it's part of what makes me want to move out of Canada, honestly.
I'm
Like
sure. I'm sure.
because when I was in schools when it first started really changing,
Okay.
where we had Christmas celebrations, we had Easter,
Hmm.
we had on Remembrance Day, we had our moment of silence,
Hmm.
we had all these things. Within second year, we no longer had Christmas celebrations. We no longer had Easter celebrations. We got rid of our moment of silence for Remembrance Day.
What's the reason? Sorry.
It offended some people,
Really?
but we added in Ramadan.
Okay.
We added in Eid. So we celebrated all other religious holidays,
Except for
but not the Christian ones. And again, I'm atheist, but for me, I'm living in a Christian founded country.
exactly.
So Christmas, yes. Easter, all those things, yes. And no one's saying you can't, celebrate Eid or Ramadan or nothing like that, or Diwali. No one's saying that. It's just everything should be equally celebrated. Because if we are this diverse country,
Hmm.
why are we saying, hey, this Christian culture, this white culture is not okay,
Hmm.
but everything else is okay because we're so progressive? But it's like, that's not progression.
That's not progression. Yeah.
I'm like,
I mean, you're
it's going the
supposed to
opposite
if
way.
you're welcoming another culture, then it does not mean you forget your own,
Exactly.
right? You're supposed to embrace them. That's a really good thing, but it does not put you in any way accountable that you have to do it. But if you're doing it, if you're teaching your kids that you should be accepting of other cultures, that's really good. But like you said, we lost a lot of things, and I'm not from Christian faith either, but I feel sorry for people of this country and the Christians. And again, which is why people probably might hate me, but again, this was a very recent thing that Andrew Tate was protesting in Romania.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw that during the Olympics they made fun of some of the
Yeah.
things from Christianity, right?
Yeah. From the Last
Yeah,
Supper. Yeah.
from the Last Supper, and he stood up for the people, went out and said that, how can you allow this? Because these tiny things, when when years goes by, it's just accepted as a norm now. You
Yeah.
need to stop and speak up when and if you see something happening wrong,
Like, could you imagine if that was any other religion? What would happen if they were mocking another religion other than
Yeah.
Christianity? Like, it would, I think all hell would break loose. Like, it
I can
wouldn't
I can
be
talk
good.
to you about my country. Go to Pakistan, okay? In Pakistan, till date, a lot of people are killed in the name
Yeah.
of religion.
Yeah.
Like killed. I'm sorry, not even jailed. Killed by
Yeah.
mobs. They get away with it. No action is taken. They're living their life like normal, although they killed a person probably yesterday. no action taken. Why? Because they did something against the religion.
Well, yeah, like I have a friend from, well, not anymore, but I had a friend from Egypt, and he was talking about how messed up it is there. Like, just that you can get away with certain crimes against women and stuff because it's in the name of religion.
Yeah.
And that's part
Honor
of the,
killing.
yeah, and that's part of the reason why he wanted to move to Canada. He's like, I can't, he's like, I'm so tired of this aspect of my culture and being surrounded by it. Like, this, it's not okay. He's like, you're still killing people, which should be against religion to kill someone.
Yeah.
So when he came here, he was saying, oh my God, so awesome. Like, no one cares if you're gay. No one cares if you're trans. No one cares if you're white, black, Asian. No one cares. And he's like, but in my country, all those things matter and could be a reason that you get killed.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's crazy that there's still some people that mindset here who bring that mindset here. Like, we've had honor killings here in Canada.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure. So that is very unfortunate. And if any of our viewers have or share the similar opinion, or even if you oppose it, please give us a solid reason as to why.
Yeah.
And we would love to know about it. So, all right. There are some more things that I want to cover, and that's mainly related to your line of work. And since my show and my concept is about how the common people live in this country, would you mind sharing some of the major expenses that you have? Probably not broken down in numbers,
Yeah.
but first of all, probably I want to ask, how much do you spend in a month holistically? Like, what's the ballpark number? Or the
I mean, probably around like over 3,000.
So that's the average.
Definitely over 3,000. And I live in a basement with my boyfriend, so we have a split rent.
Okay.
But it's still expensive for a basement, and we're lucky because our basement price, we live in Pickering. Instead, we don't live in Scarborough anymore because Scarborough's like, you can't even afford it now.
Yeah.
But even in Pickering, like, we got a really low price for our rent that a lot of other people don't get. So it could be much worse than it is right now. But it's
Despite
hard
that you're spending more than $3,000 in a month.
Yeah, and it's hard because everything's gone up in price. Like, food is crazy. Like,
Yeah.
it's so expensive, and people are like, "Oh, well, don't shop at Loblaws."
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I shop at Walmart and Loblaws depending on what I'm buying,
Yeah.
and there's something at Loblaws that are cheaper than Walmart. So it's like we're out here, you know.
So we're probably compromising our likes and dislikes now
Yes.
because of how crazy it is to just survive in this country, right?
Yeah, and like food banks are at a record high right now.
Yeah.
Like, that's so crazy to me. Like, growing up, I lived off food banks.
Yeah, you told. Yeah.
And it was always really poor quality food, but it was food. And I couldn't even imagine like not having that now. Like, that's crazy that we're
That's
at
one
that
of the
point.
things, by the way, I read a couple of months ago that food banks are running out of food because a lot of people, again, I don't want to again highlight this, they're going to say you're just bashing the brown guys.
I know.
But there are a lot of brown people who are taking advantage of it,
Yeah.
despite having income
Yeah.
and something that they can afford, but they still choose to go to food banks just because it's free food.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah. No, yeah. No, and that's the thing. And also because food bank food, a lot of it comes from donations, and people can't be affording to donate that to other people because everyone's just trying to feed themselves.
Yeah.
Like, for me, I know, like, a lot of the times, even when I was in school, I was a student. So, you know, you think not much money, you're a student.
Yeah.
But I still had enough money that, you know, I sponsored a child in Kenya through UNICEF. I donated money to food banks because I know what it was like to be poor and have nothing. So
Right.
anything that I have, I try to help out.
Yeah.
But it's like, I couldn't even think about doing that right now. Like,
True.
I
Yeah, you can.
I can't. It's
I mean,
crazy.
I spend a lot of money on stupid things, but then again, it's not the best of how money should be managed, but it's unfortunate everything is expensive. Like, I want to party, I'm sorry to say. I want to go out, and I expect where I work, it's actually one of the top 5 financial institutions. So I'm getting paid good, but then again, my expenditure is I want to live a certain lifestyle right now at
Mhm.
this age, and to continue doing that, apparently my income is not enough anymore.
Yeah, well, even for me, like, I don't go out. Like, maybe if I'm lucky, like, like an anniversary or a birthday, me and my boyfriend will go out for a dinner. But like, we don't even go out, and we can't like afford anything. And I've come to the realization that, like, in order to live the life I thought I was gonna have, where I was gonna have a house, I was gonna have a yard for my dog, have kids, I'm probably gonna have to leave Canada because
Yeah.
that dream is dead. And it's like, I've spoken to a lot of people who don't want to have kids, and majority of them, it's not even because they don't want to have kids. It's
They can't afford it.
it's exactly
Because you want to have a set of lifestyle with that child,
yeah,
right? You want to probably buy them what a child needs, not even
not even wants.
want.
Yeah,
Just need. The child needs to probably go out once in a week,
yeah,
just for his own mental growth. He needs to go to amusement parks. He needs to go to malls. He needs to probably buy some things.
yeah,
So you can't afford that anymore, and you can't lock up a child in a fucking basement,
yeah,
or for that matter, anywhere else, and then expect him to grow healthy and not be stupid or mentally ill, because he is going to turn out like that
yeah,
if he's and plus the other side to this, if he's growing up and he sees it, his or her parent struggling with finances and always fighting and clashing,
yeah,
what is he gonna learn? He's gonna be one of those fucking people who just probably you know steal stuff, or
yeah,
the car thefts that we're seeing nowadays.
yeah,
So it's on the rise. It's unfortunate whenever crimes increase, you it's something to reflect on how the society is functioning.
yes, yeah,
You go to Dubai, that country is very straightforward. You have money, cool,
yeah,
welcome. You don't have money, get the fuck out of here.
yeah,
You have a stable job, then you can live in a certain way.
yeah,
You cannot commit a crime. You cannot abuse in the streets.
yeah.
And that country is perfectly fine.
Well,
People love to go there and spend their money.
speaking of Dubai, what's crazy is that there are some condos and stuff there that's cheaper than rent here in Toronto.
Oh, 1000%.
And I'm like, how, like, when I think of Dubai, I think of like, spending lots of money. It's really expensive. And I'm like, the fact that Dubai is more affordable than Toronto is like,
I'll tell you that from my
crazy.
personal experience. My brother lives in Dubai from the past 13 years. He's been there. So going from Pakistan to Dubai was like, holy fuck, it's so expensive. Now comparing Canada to
Yeah.
Dubai, Canada is twice as expensive.
Yeah.
Be it rent, food, just basic things. Like even my brother was probably getting a washing machine, I think, recently.
hmm
His broke down and he told me the price. And I think the equivalent was like $300. And I was like, you cannot get a decent washing machine here for less than $1,000,
Yeah.
right? You need a fucking $1,000 to buy that machine.
Yeah.
And that's something that you need. Again, it's not a want. You need that
Yeah.
fucking thing. So God forbid if your goes, it does not work anymore. So you're looking at 1G to just have that something
Yeah.
so basic.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't have the money to have like a security fund. They always say
They
you should
don't.
have a security fund. I'm like, no one has security
I
funds
don't.
anymore.
I don't.
Like
To be
no one
honest, I
can
don't.
afford it. It's
Yeah.
crazy. And it's just like, and a big expense is rent. The rent is crazy expensive now. Also, car insurance has severely, drastically just like shot right up. And it's like, well, now people can't afford to drive anymore. And it's like people need to drive to get their kids to school. Like I know people say take the bus, but public transit to some point is no longer
Sustainable, yeah.
a reliable source. Like sometimes you're taking 2 hours to get somewhere that takes half an hour. And not to mention half the time TTC is not safe anymore. Like
Yeah.
I've had experiences on the TTC multiple times where I wasn't safe.
Yeah.
So it's crazy to me that that's kind of where we're at right now.
Or where we're heading. So probably a question. And by the way, regarding the housing, my next guest
Yeah.
is something someone who I'm gonna ask in detail about how this is going to head in future, and probably let me see, because he's making a lot of money out of it. So maybe he's someone who's gonna answer some of those questions for our viewers. If someone wants to get in the line of work that you are in modeling,
It's always been the same thing where only the top 1% of models make a good living.
okay,
The Candace Swanepoels, the Kendall Jenners, all of them, they only the top 1% make really, really decent money.
okay,
But right now there's a lot of smaller boutique agencies that are taking people who don't meet the minimum 5'9" requirement. That may be shorter, a little bigger in dimensions, not your traditional model look. But unfortunately with this is a lot of what comes with it is exploitation. They're getting jobs for really low amounts of money. A lot of times they're working free. So it depends on why you're getting into modeling. If it's something you want to do, you think you're, going to be on Vogue, you're going to be the next Kendall Jenner, you kind of have to realistically evaluate what you can bring to the table and what your expectations are and kind of align them. If you want to be a music video model. A lot of those are just, your normal looking girls, different sizes, different heights, different
Mhm.
ages. For me, like being almost 30, I'm aging out, but I've been doing a lot of music videos.
Okay.
Because there's less restrictions on that.
Yeah.
But if you want to be a high fashion model and you're not 5'9" and you're not like straight built,
Mhm.
it's not realistic to think you're going to be a high fashion model.
Okay.
So my recommendation is think about why you want to get into it.
Mhm.
Think about what your expectations are and do research on the sector that you want to get into and see if realistically it's something you can do.
Mhm.
Like I never want to say you can't do something, but there's also a realistic level of like, hey, don't put all your eggs in this basket because it's less likely for you to fall in this category.
Mhm. Mhm. Nice, nice. Yeah, I think we've covered a lot of things today, and I'm sure our viewers would have their own opinion, and we're welcoming that. Is there any last message that you want to give to your followers because you're going to be sharing this to your page as well? Is there something you want to say to them, or are you also? I'm assuming you are. Will you be open to people reaching out to you and probably if they want to get in the same line of work as you are, would you be okay with that?
Yeah, for me, I've always been an open door. Even when I was sometimes when I'm on set, I meet newer, younger models and I always give them pep talks. I'm like, listen, I've been where you are. Don't, compromise yourself. Don't compromise your pay. Just don't give in to things because you want to be a model or you don't have that confidence to really fight for yourself. It's
Mhm.
just always fighting for yourself. But yeah, like I'm always open to giving advice, except for a lot of the girls who used to bully me reach out to me and
Mhm.
say, hey, can you help me get in modeling?
Mhm.
Well, no, not you guys.
I understand, man. That's perfectly fine. But yeah, Renee, thank you so much for joining me today. This conversation was really nice, and it could not have been better.
Yep, agreed.
Thanks to you because you've been a really great guest, and you're comfortable as the as way you speak, the things that you shared today. A lot of lessons for myself, to be honest. I'm gonna take away a lot of things from this conversation, and I'm sure the viewers in our audience is gonna learn a lot of things from you. So
I
yeah,
hope so. I hope so. But
thank you,
yep. Thank you.
thank you.
It's been a blast.